Greetings everybody. Just thought I might give some of my ideas on investing in Bitcoin, whether it's the right thing or not. There's a lot of options out there. So these are just my thoughts. Take them or leave them. So Bitcoin is still a relatively new idea, to be honest. When I first looked into Bitcoin myself, it was about 10 or so years ago, and it sounded really good, but it had already gone up to $4,000. And from about $200 when I was looking, and I thought, no, I'm not, it's just gone up too much, it has to crash. Anyway, it kept going up to 14,000 before it finally did crash, which I'll discuss in a minute some of the reasons behind that. Obviously it recovered from that and it's up to around 40,000 today. And even some of the big boys are now getting into it. Elon Musk, some of your big corporations are starting to buy into it. But in a minute I will discuss some of an issue that not a lot of people are actually talking about, which is a really important issue when it comes to whether you should or should not invest in Bitcoin. Because the media, everywhere, it's how wonderful Bitcoin is doing. There are lots of asset classes at the moment that are doing really, really well. Real estate is doing really well. Your trading card game, I mean, you won't see this on mainstream media, but Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering have all gone up massive amounts. Interestingly, is gold and silver hasn't really taken off like that yet, and traditionally that is what happens. So it seems to be that there's a people are losing a bit of faith in currencies, so they're looking for real tangible things. Real estate, Bitcoin, tangible as such, but it can't be printed, if you like, to oblivion, which a lot of the central banks are starting to do to deal with the issues they've got. Of course, that can get, in fact, a lot of people would say it is getting out of control. And what will that mean for the long term? It's seen as an alternative to government-backed securities and printing, and that's why it's getting a lot of interest at the moment. Now, it's going to be interesting what the government actually do regarding this push into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, if it ever becomes mainstream tradable between people, big advantage of Bitcoin is that you can make a transaction with someone and the government doesn't need to know what's going on. It's private, which is one of the main draw cards. Of course, governments don't like that very much. They want to tax people, they want to know what's going on. It's underlying, they're fundamentally not keen on Bitcoin. However, last time Bitcoin rallied, several years ago, it was mostly retail investors. And now it is a lot of your big corporations and things like that that are really getting into it. So the game has changed somewhat. And those influential people, I guess you call them, corporations and things, have a big influence on governments. Okay? Because before, Bitcoin went to about 14,000, and then out came a lot of reasons why Bitcoin was no good, and you may not remember, and we haven't heard much of it this time, but I'd be very careful. If you start hearing terms like this, I would start to be very careful, because the way they can suppress Bitcoin is, last time they did it, they started linking it to terrorism. Oh no, the terrorists are using Bitcoin for their operations. That's how they fund it. Need to ban Bitcoin, and that scared a lot of people. Of course, interest in Bitcoin dropped, and they didn't have to do anything about it because interest had dropped. Everyone was relying back on your fiat currencies. They could bring that out again. Now they want to maintain that we're a free economy. You can invest in whatever you want. So they don't particularly want to ban it as such, but if they can discourage you, so they can just threaten that it terrorism, that it drug cartels, whatever you use. What was that? Oh, apparently clauses climate change as well. Sorry? Oh, and racism. Apparently it's racist. There you go, guys. It might have to be banned because of all these terrible things it is. Now, if you start, okay, they also had all your drug syndicates, where they were using Bitcoin, so we must have faith in their currencies. I would have before thought this would happen. At what stage, I don't know. It's impossible to tell, except now that a lot of corporations and things have got involved, it's changed the tune. It could be used to get people more familiar with cryptocurrencies, and then, well, you don't need Bitcoin, you can have Fed coin, you can have the British coin, the Aussie coin, cryptocurrencies that are then regulated and controlled by governments, and actually starts heading us towards a cashless society. So they could be using it from that angle until we all get familiar, and then they can introduce their cryptocurrency, which will be the one that legally needs to be used, because that way they can stop terrorism and all your other bad things if it's not monitored, if governments can't see exactly what you're doing. They need to do this for your own protection, of course. So that may be the angle they come from if it keeps going. I mean, I don't know, I really don't know, but personally, I'd be fairly dubious. And just remember, there are lots of other things you can invest in that are going really well at the moment as well. A lot of them are ridiculously high and probably due for a correction, but at the same time, if something's gone up 100% and it drops 20-30%, of course, if you bought at the top, you're going to be down a bit. But overall, those who bought early enough are going to still be well and truly up, and that's probably what I see happening as such. So there will be a correction of some stage, maybe 20-30-40%, but overall it will still be higher. And the one I'd really keep your eye on is your precious metals, because they haven't really moved yet. Now, a lot of that is because they use things, well, derivatives and things like that. So if you want to buy a Bitcoin, for example, you buy a Bitcoin, okay? But if you want to buy gold, you don't necessarily have to buy gold. You can buy a derivative which is linked to the price of gold. So instead of actually buying the gold, you call it a piece of paper, and then someone else buys a piece of paper, etc. Now that piece of paper is linked to the price of gold. So if gold's $2,000 and you buy the piece of paper, if gold goes up to $2,100, your piece of paper will go up to $2,100, and everyone else who's bought all the derivatives, that'll be the same. But instead of buying the derivatives, if they actually bought gold, then the price of gold would shoot up far, far higher. So if that makes sense. So they can, I don't know if they will, maybe they have. Instead of having to buy Bitcoins, you might be able to buy derivatives that are linked to the price of Bitcoins. So if the value of Bitcoins goes up, so does your derivative. If it goes down, so does your derivative. But instead of someone actually buying the Bitcoin, they're buying a derivative linked to the price of Bitcoin, so the demand doesn't actually hit the value of the Bitcoin. Okay, it's very clever. That's just one thing that could come out. Of course, if you hear about things like that coming out, that means there will be less demand directly on the Bitcoin itself. It'll be more on the derivatives, which won't actually influence the price of the Bitcoin per se. Okay, so just be careful of that. So, as summing up again, if you hear any talk about governments getting concerned because it's illegal activities with Bitcoin, then they're losing control, and they want you to use their currency, okay? That's how they control things. It'd be awful for them if the population was able to control their own currency, their own income. Banks, okay, a lot of people aren't aware of this. Quite interesting, but most people think most of the money in society actually comes from the printing press. Okay, it doesn't. Most money out there comes through debt. So if you go to a bank and get a $20,000 loan, that money has just been created. There is now $20,000 in the system that goes around. If you then pay off that loan, then $20,000 has disappeared from the system. That is where most of the money comes from. That's why banks are so powerful. They control the money in the system. If we move away from fiat currencies, then banks lose a lot of power, and this may be a reason why there will be a lot of people who aren't happy with Bitcoin. At the very least, I think Bitcoin will probably they'll give you reasons for it, but it'll just get regulated at some point in time. where okay, maybe we'll put up with Bitcoin, but we need to see all the transactions and things like that to keep you safe, of course. Okay, so that's just generally where it may head. It may just get totally where they come out and say, nah, it's too much illegal activity, we need to ban it. They can use it just to get you more familiar with cryptos so that you embrace their version of cryptos. But things are going to get very interesting in this place because it has taken off. It has become huge. A lot of the big corporations are now getting into it. So yeah, you're going to find big swings either way as more people want to get into it because they see it as an alternative to fiat currencies, and fiat currencies will lose, people are losing faith in it, I guess you'd say. And then, of course, governments are going to want to maintain that control, and so are banks. So there's going to be some adjustments happening. I'm just spitballing how this could work, but I haven't really seen too many YouTube videos focusing on the... haven't seen too many YouTube videos focusing on what the likely actions are going to be regarding this. Okay, it's not just a collecting where you collect stamps or coins or whatever it is and they go up in value, down in value. It's seen as an potentially alternative currency, so it has much bigger ramifications than just you're investing in real estate or whatever it is. Much bigger ramifications. Okay, hope that makes some sense.